In this assignment we're going to be talking about making decompositions, and what a decomposition is pretty much just a breakdown of a basic shape into smaller parts. So earlier we talked about making the golden ratio and the root 5 rectangle, and we're going to use those, also a square and a circle, and we're going to do a decomposition of those. So I'll do one as an example of the different ways that you could do a decomposition. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a square here. So I've got just this plain square, and I want to kind of make other shapes inside of it to kind of break it apart in interesting ways. And then I'll go ahead and I'll highlight those whatever lines I think are most interesting to kind of create almost like a logo or a mark that I find really interesting, and that's what the assignment will be. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw out some shapes. And there's no specific way to do this. They can be whatever you think is interesting, whatever you think is working. Let me do some across like this. Oh, those aren't exactly lined up, so I'm going to start over again. Except this time I'm going to start from the corners. I'm going to go from corner to corner and see what happens. All the way around. Let's see, and then we'll go ahead and draw some lines, maybe from here to here. Okay, so I've got something that I think might be kind of interesting. And so now what to do, actually I'm going to add one more thing. Make that star pattern kind of even all the way around. So I've got something that I think might be interesting, and so now what I'm going to do is kind of highlight the parts that I think are most interesting. I'll do one example where I highlight the line work itself, and then I'll do another one where we learn about the live paint bucket tool, which allows you to paint in these individual spaces here. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of choose things to highlight here. And then if you click on something and you want it to match something else, you click on the shape you want, press the I key, and then click on another shape that already looks like what you're going for, and it'll copy that information onto the line that you've selected, which is a quick way of making a lot of things look similar. Okay. I'm going to select all of these. All of these too. So I think for the assignment actually everything needs to be just thicker black lines, so I'm going to select all these red lines that I've just done and make them thicker black lines so everything stands out that I want to have stand out. There we go. That's looking a little interesting. I want to fade out these smaller kind of construction lines, so I'm going to select all of these and you can either make the stroke really small, say 0.25 instead of 1, and they're kind of out of the way, or you can go to the opacity up here and just choose a lighter color, and that kind of makes the lines a little transparent, so you can hide them that way also. Make that 20. So that way, if you make it a lower opacity, around 20 or so, you can still see the construction lines, but it doesn't really take away from the ones that you're trying to highlight. And so I was just decomposing inside this square, and so I want to be able to highlight just this area without anything else. And so what I'm going to do is, like we learned before, I'm going to make a clipping mask over this area. Select everything with Control A, or on a Mac, Command A. Right click and say Make Clipping Mask. And there, everything is clipped inside that square there, and that is one square decomposition. So that's an example of one that you could do for just purely line work, no shading in at all. And so now what I'm going to do is kind of do this again. See, I'm actually going to redo this clipping mask. There we go, so I can save this one and remember what I did. So I'm going to make another one just by clicking, dragging, holding Shift and Alt, so it drags in a straight line and makes a copy. And I'm going to release the clipping mask on this one, and I'm going to put this top one that I just did on a different layer. There we go, that way I can hide that but still keep it. I can just get it out of the way for a moment. So I'm going to make all these the same weight again, and this time I'm going to be, instead of highlighting the lines, I'm going to be filling in the spaces. So I've got all my line work laid out that I think is interesting, and so what I'm going to do is hit the K key on the keyboard, which brings up the Live Paint Bucket tool. You can also go down here, Live Paint Bucket. It's under the Shape Builder tool, most likely. It'll be showing the Shape Builder tool first. So you go to that, hold down, and then go to the Live Paint Bucket tool. And I go, and first I need to highlight everything that I want in that group. Click on the Live Paint Bucket tool, and you can see it'll say click to make a live paint group. And so I click to do that. Okay. And you can see now it's taken all the intersections and made them into kind of their own little shapes and segments. So now I can choose a color. I think for the assignment you need to do black. And I can go through and highlight things just by clicking on them. It's a much faster way of highlighting areas rather than having to do each individual shape and cut out each individual shape and fill it with a color. This way you can get a whole bunch of different line work segments together really quickly, and you can kind of play around with those. And you can change the color really quickly. You can make it wide again to kind of play around with exactly what you want. So I've got this one. I'm going to drag that over here, make a new one, and then keep playing around with it. So with Illustrator it's really nice because you can just drag a copy over once you've got one that you kind of like, and you can keep exploring with the one that you're working on. Okay, so select black again. There's another one. And you can do this as many times as you want, just keep exploring with what you think is the best. One thing that you'll need to know is that once you've got this live paint group, if you want to add something to it, for example, say I wanted to put a square right here in the middle for some reason that intersects with this circle, it won't let that square interact with the rest of the lines. So you'll have to highlight everything again, go to Object, Live Paint, and then Merge, I believe. So now that square that I drew has made all these extra little segments inside. So if you want to add anything, make sure that you merge it by going to Object, Live Paint, Merge, and you'll be able to use that. So now I've got these two things. I'm going to get rid of this one. I think I like this one better. I'm going to make a clipping mask. If it's not showing up on the right click, you can go to Object, Clipping Mask, Make. I need to go into this clipping mask really quick and select all this line work and drop the opacity down. Oops. Need to go in one more layer. Just going to make these a bit skinnier. There we go. Go back out. So I've got that one, and then I'm going to unhide my other layer here with my other composition. And so there's an example of how to make a line decomposition and a filled-in decomposition using the paint bucket tool. Now you'll need to do one square, one circle, one golden ratio, and one root 5 rectangle. So you can choose, if the circle is going to be a line composition or a paint bucket filled-in composition. You don't have to do one for each. You don't have to do, a line and a filled-in for each shape. Just the 4 shapes, probably 2 that are lines and 2 that are filled-in decompositions. And then lay all 4 of them on a page and put your name on it.